The recording device hummed softly in the quiet room. Commander Vexler sat across from the historian, his forearms resting on the metal table. His crystalline skin caught the dim light, creating small rainbows on the walls. Scars covered his body, each one a memory of battles fought long ago. Talmira, the historian, adjusted her recording equipment. She looked at the old warrior with curious eyes. "Commander, thank you for agreeing to this interview. The Galactic Coalition needs to preserve these memories. The war ended 30 years ago, but many still do not understand what happened." Vexler nodded slowly. His voice was rough, like grinding stones. "I was there from the beginning. I saw things that still wake me at night. If my words can teach the younger generation, then my nightmares have purpose." "Tell me about first contact with humanity," Talmira said. The commander closed his eyes. The memories came flooding back as fresh as yesterday. "We discovered them 40 years before the war. They had just learned to travel faster than light. We thought they were like children, playing with toys too dangerous for them. But in those 40 years, they spread across 12 star systems. 12 systems in 40 years. No species in Coalition history had expanded so fast." He paused, his hands trembling slightly. The Coalition was worried. These humans were moving into territories we had claimed. Our high command sent them a message. Stop expanding or face the consequences. Simple. Clear. We expected them to negotiate, to ask for time, to beg for mercy. "What did they say?" Talmira asked, though she already knew the answer from the records. One word. Just one word came back through our communication channels. "No." Vexler laughed, but there was no humor in it. "We thought it was a translation error. How could an entire species respond with such arrogance? We had thousands of warships. We had technology refined over centuries. We had defeated 17 species in the past 300 years. The humans had nothing. They were babies compared to us." The commander stood and walked to the window. Outside, the capital city of the Coalition stretched toward the horizon. The High Command ordered a show of force. "Send a fleet, destroy a few of their outer colonies. Make them understand who rules the galaxy." I was assigned as tactical officer on the dreadnought Eternal Victory. A good name, we thought. A name that would become legendary. He turned back to face Talmira. "We arrived at their outer rim, a small mining colony called Redstone. Population 20,000, minimal defenses. We expected surrender within hours. Instead, we got silence. Then we saw them coming. Not warships, civilian vessels, mining haulers, transport ships, cargo freighters, dozens of them flying straight at our fleet. At first, we laughed. What could civilian ships do against military dreadnoughts? Then our sensors detected something. Each ship was loaded with explosives. Fusion cores set to overload. Chemical charges packed into cargo holds. They had turned every vessel into a bomb. And they were not stopping. Vexler's voice dropped to a whisper. I watched the first one hit. It was a mining ship, old and rusted. It crashed into the shield of the dreadnought beside us. The explosion was massive. The shields failed instantly. The second ship hit the same spot. Then a third. Within minutes, the dreadnought was gone. 15,000 Coalition soldiers dead. Our fleet scattered. We tried to shoot down the civilian ships, but there were too many. They came from all directions. Some were piloted. Some were remote-controlled. They did not care about losses. 3 dreadnoughts fell that day. 3 of our most powerful ships destroyed by what we thought were helpless civilians. The commander sat back down heavily. That was my first lesson about humans. They do not think like we do. When we face death, we retreat. We preserve our forces. We calculate acceptable losses. Humans? They saw those civilian ships as weapons. They saw their own people as ammunition. 20,000 colonists died that day. They took their entire colony and turned it into a weapon to kill us. Talmira was quiet for a moment. Did you understand then what you were facing? No, not yet. We thought they were desperate. We thought they would run out of ships, out of people willing to die. We were so wrong. Vexler rubbed his face with one of his hands. The Coalition sent more fleets. We began a proper invasion of human space. We had the numbers. We had the technology. Victory was certain. That is what the High Command told us. I remember the briefings. Human ships were slower than ours. Their weapons were weaker. Their armor was thinner. On paper, 1 Coalition warship could defeat 5 human vessels. But paper does not scream when it dies. Paper does not feel fear. And paper does not lie awake at night. wondering if the enemy is planning something you cannot imagine. The first major battle was at a place humans called New Haven, a colony world with 2 million people. We sent a fleet of 100 warships. The humans had maybe 30 ships defending the planet. Easy victory. Standard siege tactics. Cut off supply lines. Bombard military targets. Wait for surrender. Vexler's expression darkened. The humans did not defend from orbit like we expected. They pulled their ships back to the planet's surface. Then they started launching missiles. Thousands of missiles. But these were not military weapons. They were modified cargo containers, launched from magnetic rails built into the ground. Each container held 100 small drones. Each drone carried explosives. Our point defense systems were overwhelmed. We shot down most of them, but not all. The drones that got through did not target our weapons or our engines. They targeted our sensor arrays. Within hours, half our fleet was blind. Then the human ships attacked from the planet's shadow. We never saw them coming. We lost 43 ships that day. The humans lost 12. By our calculations, by all logic and reason, we should have won easily. Instead, we limped away in defeat. The historian leaned forward. What did you feel in that moment? Vexler met her eyes. Fear, real fear. Not the fear of dying in battle. The fear of fighting an enemy that thinks in ways you cannot predict. An enemy that turns every disadvantage into a weapon. An enemy that does not fear death. He stood again, his movements slow and tired. You want to know about human warfare? Then you need to understand something fundamental. They do not fight like soldiers. They fight like demons with nothing left to lose. They fight like every battle is their last battle. They fight like their entire species will die if they fail. And the truly terrifying part? Vexler looked directly at the recording device. They fight that way because in their history it was always true. Lose the battle, lose everything. So they never lose. They cannot afford to. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the recording equipment. Talmira knew this was only the beginning of the story. The war had lasted 5 years. There was so much more to hear. Tell me about Proxima Tiers, she said softly. Vexler closed his eyes again. That is where I learned what humans are truly capable of when you take away their hope. Vexler walked to the water dispenser and filled a container. His hands still shook when he talked about certain battles. Proxima Tiers was one of them. He drank slowly, gathering his thoughts before continuing. 6 months into the war, the Coalition High Command changed strategy. No more direct assaults. We would surround human colonies and cut off their supplies, starve them, make them weak, force them to surrender without wasting our ships and soldiers. It was a smart plan. It had worked against every other species we had fought. He sat back down at the table. Proxima Tiers was chosen as the test case. A mining colony in a remote system. 80,000 humans lived there, mostly families, workers and their children. The colony produced rare metals for human ship construction. If we took it, we would hurt their war effort significantly. We brought a fleet of 60 warships. We positioned them around the system, blocking all entry and exit points. No supplies could get in, no messages could get out. We waited. Standard procedure said civilians would evacuate within 2 weeks. If they had military leadership, they might hold out for a month. Then hunger and desperation would force surrender. Talmira made notes on her data pad. How long did they hold out?
8 months, Vexler said quietly.
8 months of complete blockade. No food shipments, no medical supplies, no reinforcements. Just 80,000 humans trapped on a rock in space. The first month was normal. They rationed their food. They sent us angry messages. They demanded we leave. Typical responses. We ignored them. The second month, the messages stopped. Our sensors showed activity on the surface, but we could not tell what they were doing. The third month, they started shooting at us. The commander's expression was distant, lost in memory. Not with military weapons. They had some defensive cannons, but those were expected. No, they built new weapons. They took their mining equipment and converted it into mass drivers. They used industrial explosives to make missiles. Every factory, every workshop, every garage became a weapons facility. Our intelligence officers intercepted their internal communications. That is when we realized what was happening. Every human on that colony had become a soldier. The children, some as young as 12 years old, were working in the ammunition factories. The elderly maintained the life support systems and grew food in hydroponic gardens. Every single adult was either fighting or supporting the fighters. Vexilor's voice grew harder. They were eating 400 calories per day. Do you understand how little that is? They were starving themselves slowly. Their children were starving, but they never stopped fighting. They fired at our ships every single day. Sometimes the shots missed by kilometers. Sometimes they hit. We lost 2 frigates to their improvised weapons. The High Command was angry. This was supposed to be an easy siege. It was becoming an embarrassment. They ordered me to lead a ground assault. Take the colony by force. Show them that resistance was futile. The historian looked up from her notes. You went to the surface? Yes, I took 5,000 soldiers. We had powered armor, energy weapons, air support. They had mining equipment and whatever guns they could build. It should have been a massacre. We should have taken the main settlement in hours. He laughed bitterly. We lost 800 soldiers in the first day. They knew we were coming. Of course they did. They had months to prepare. Every building was a fortress. Every tunnel was trapped. They fought from positions we did not know existed. When we destroyed one defensive line, they fell back to another, and another, and another. Vexilor stood and began pacing. I saw things in that colony that I still cannot explain. Buildings that had collapsed, completely destroyed, but still had humans inside fighting. Soldiers who had not eaten in days, so weak they could barely stand, but they kept shooting. Children running ammunition to the front lines through underground tunnels, while we bombarded the surface above them. We captured one of their positions on the 5th day. It was a medical facility. We expected to find wounded soldiers, maybe some supplies. Instead, we found a human woman. Her name was Jiwan. She was a combat medic. The commander stopped pacing. She was treating wounded soldiers with almost no equipment. She was using cloth torn from her own clothing for bandages. She was performing surgery with mining tools. And in the corner of the room, she was keeping coalition prisoners alive. I could not believe it. They were starving. They were dying. But she was wasting precious medical supplies on enemy soldiers. I asked her why. Do you know what she said? Vexler's voice cracked slightly. She looked me directly in the eyes and said, "We die standing. We die human. We do not become monsters just because you are." Telmira was silent, absorbing the weight of those words. We held that position for 3 days. Then they took it back. Jiwan disappeared in the fighting. I do not know if she survived the siege. I hope she did. She deserved to survive. The commander returned to his seat. The assault lasted 2 weeks. We controlled maybe 10% of the colony before I called for withdrawal. I had lost 2,000 soldiers. The humans had lost at least 5,000, maybe more, but they were still fighting, still shooting at us as we retreated to our ships. I sent a report to High Command. I recommended immediate orbital bombardment, destroy the entire colony from space. It was the only way to win. They refused. They wanted the mining facilities intact. They wanted to use the colony for themselves after the war. So the siege continued. 4 more months. 4 more months of watching those humans slowly die. Our sensors showed their power generation dropping, their heat signatures fading. They were freezing in addition to starving. Any rational species would have surrendered. Any sane group of beings would have chosen life over pride. Vexilor's hands clenched into fists. But humans are not rational, not when their survival is threatened. They kept fighting. Every day fewer shots, every day weaker signals, but they never stopped. Then in the 8th month, something changed. Our long-range sensors detected human ships approaching. A rescue fleet, 20 warships coming fast. We had 60 ships, but we were spread out around the system. The humans concentrated their force on one point. They smashed through our blockade like it was paper. The battle lasted 6 hours. We lost 15 ships. The humans lost 7, but they got through. They landed on Proxima Tiers and evacuated everyone they could. 42,000 survivors, 42,000 out of 80,000. Half the colony died rather than surrender. The commander looked at Telmira with haunted eyes. Do you understand what I am telling you? Half of them died. Parents watched their children starve. Children watched their parents work themselves to death. And they never gave up. Never. Not for one single day. After the evacuation, the remaining humans destroyed everything. They detonated charges throughout the mining facilities. They collapsed the tunnels. They made sure we would get nothing from our 8-month siege. Then they left. The last message we received from the surface was simple. This is what happens when you try to take our home. Vexilor drank more water. That battle changed how I saw the war. Before I thought we were fighting soldiers. After Proxima Tears, I realized we were fighting something else. We were fighting a species that had learned to survive against impossible odds, a species that would rather die than submit. The High Command analyzed the battle. They calculated that if every human colony fought like Proxima Tears, the war would last decades. We would lose millions of soldiers. The cost would be unthinkable. But they still believed we would win eventually. We had more ships, more resources, more soldiers. What they did not calculate, what they could not understand, was the psychological impact. Every coalition soldier heard about Proxima Tears. Every soldier knew that the next colony might fight just as hard. Fear spread through our ranks, not fear of dying, fear of fighting an enemy that would never stop. The historian set down her data pad. What was the first rule you mentioned? About time being on their side? Yes, that is when I learned it. Humans are patient in ways we cannot imagine. They will fight for months, years, generations if needed. They measure wars in lifetimes. We measure wars in campaigns. That difference? That is why we were always going to lose. Vexlor looked at the ceiling. But I did not know that yet. I still thought we could win. I still believed in coalition superiority. It took more defeats, more nightmares before I finally understood the truth. Tell me about the ghost ships, Talamira said. The commander's expression changed to something close to fear. Now that is when I realized humans were not just fighting us. They were evolving, changing themselves to win, and that terrified me more than anything else. The lights in the interview room dimmed automatically as evening approached. Talmira offered to continue another day, but Vexlor shook his head. No, I need to finish this. These memories do not rest just because I stopped talking about them. He adjusted his position in the chair, his old bones aching. 18 months into the war, everything had changed. The humans were no longer on the defensive. They had rebuilt their fleets faster than we could destroy them. Their technology was improving at an impossible rate. Things we thought would take them decades to develop, they achieved in months. The High Command was concerned but not worried. We still had numerical superiority. We still controlled more territory, but our supply lines were stretched thin. Human raiders were hitting our convoys, destroying our cargo ships, disrupting our logistics. That is where I come in. Vexlor pulled up a holographic display from his personal device. It showed a star chart with multiple routes marked in red. I was given command of a hunter fleet, 23 warships. Our mission was simple. Find human supply convoys and destroy them. Cut off their resources like they were cutting off ours. We tracked a convoy near the Halo Nebula, 7 human frigates heavy with cargo. Our sensors confirmed they were carrying raw materials, possibly weapons. Standard escort formation. We expected an easy victory, 7 against 23. The numbers were in our favor. The commander's hands moved across the holographic display, recreating the battle. We approached from multiple vectors surrounding them. They did not run. That should have been my first warning. Human ships always ran when outnumbered. These ships turned to face us. Then they attacked. The coordination was perfect. Too perfect. They moved like they were one ship, not 7. Every maneuver was synchronized. When we fired at one ship, another moved to cover it. When we tried to flank, they adjusted their formation instantly. It was like fighting one mind controlling 7 bodies. Talmira leaned forward. How is that possible? That is what I wondered. Our tactical computers could not predict their movements. Every calculation was wrong. Every strategy failed. We lost 3 ships in the first 10 minutes. 3 ships? Against frigates! Vexler's voice rose with remembered frustration. Then I saw something on our sensors. Energy signatures inside those human ships, but not normal energy. Neural activity. Massive amounts of it. And data streams, flowing between the ships at speeds that should be impossible. That is when I understood. Those ships were not piloted normally. They were controlled by something else. Artificial intelligence. Humans had partnered with AI. The commander's voice dropped. We abandoned true AI centuries ago. After the machine wars, every coalition species agreed never again. AI is too dangerous, too unpredictable. We use simple computers, nothing more. But humans, they had no such fear. Or they were so desperate they did not care. They built AI systems and linked them to their ships. But that was not the worst part. They linked their own minds to those AI systems. Vexler stood and walked to the window again. The city lights were coming on, thousands of them. like stars on the ground. My flagship was damaged in the fighting. We tried to retreat, but one of the human frigates pursued us. It locked onto us with weapons we had never seen before. Weapons that adapted to our shields, changing frequency to punch through our defenses. Then they boarded us. Combat teams using breaching pods. We sealed the bridge and prepared for a fight. I had 50 guards with me, all armed with the best weapons we had. The humans came through the door like a storm. Their leader was a man named Sun Ho, Commander Sun Ho. I will never forget him. He wore a helmet with cables running from it to his spine. His eyes glowed blue through the visor. Data streams scrolling across his vision. He moved faster than any human should be able to move. He dodged shots before we fired them. He knew where we would be before we moved. The commander touched his own head. He was connected to his ship's AI. They were sharing thoughts, predictions, calculations. He could see through his ship's sensors. He could process information at computer speeds. He was not just human anymore. He was something more. The fight lasted maybe 2 minutes. My guards were down. I was cornered. Sun Ho stood over me with a weapon pointed at my head. I waited for death. It did not come. He tilted his head like he was listening to something. Then he spoke. His voice was strange, like two people talking at once. Him and the machine. He said, "You are Commander Vexler."
Tactical officer.
Veteran of 15 campaigns. You have 2 mates and 4 offspring on the Coalition homeworld. How did he know that? How did he know personal details about me? Vexler turned from the window. Their AI had hacked our databases. They knew everything about us. Sun Ho lowered his weapon. He said, "I am not going to kill you, Commander. I am going to let you go. I want you to tell your superiors what you saw here today. Tell them we are just getting started. Tell them they cannot win." Then he left. Just like that. His team withdrew to their ship. They detached and flew away. They let us live. I did not understand why, not then. Later I realized they wanted us to be afraid. They wanted us to spread fear through the Coalition fleet. Talmira made more notes. Did you report what happened? Yes, every detail. The High Command dismissed most of it as combat stress. They said human AI could not be that advanced. They said neural linking was theoretical, impossible to achieve safely. They said I was exaggerating. Vexler laughed without humor. 3 weeks later, we lost an entire battle group to ghost ships. 40 vessels destroyed by a dozen human frigates, all piloted by neural-linked commanders. That is when the High Command finally believed. But by then it was too late. Humans were not just improving their technology. They were improving themselves. They were augmenting their bodies, enhancing their brains, accepting risks that would kill most species. The commander sat back down heavily. I started having nightmares after that battle. Not about dying, about what humans were becoming. They were willing to merge with machines. They were willing to change their own biology. Where would they stop? What would they become if the war continued? Other commanders reported similar encounters. Humans with enhanced strength, fighting in powered armor that responded to their thoughts. Humans with modified eyes, seeing in spectrums we could not. Humans with implanted computers calculating trajectories and tactics in real time. They were evolving in front of us. The Coalition species evolved slowly, naturally over millions of years. Humans were forcing evolution. They were taking control of their own development. In just 18 months of war, they had changed themselves more than we had changed in 10,000 years. Vexler looked directly at Talmira. That is when I realized the terrible truth. If we did not end this war soon, we would not be fighting humans anymore. We would be fighting something new, something we had no defense against, something that could adapt faster than we could respond. The philosophers in the Coalition argued about it. Was it still human if half its brain was computer? Was it still alive if its body was more machine than flesh? These debates happened while we kept losing battles, while more soldiers died, while human territory expanded. I received a message from Sun Ho 3 months after our encounter. Just text sent through our secure channels, which meant their AI had fully compromised our communication networks. The message was simple. Evolution is survival. We will do whatever it takes. Stop fighting us or become extinct trying. The historian looked troubled. That sounds like a threat. It was. But it was also a warning, and maybe in a strange way it was an offer. Stop fighting and we both survive. Keep fighting, and they would keep evolving until we could not compete. Vexler rubbed his face. I forwarded the message to High Command with a recommendation. Begin peace negotiations immediately. They ignored me. Again, they said the coalition never surrendered. Never backed down. Pride, that is what they called it. I called it stupidity. We were not fighting a war we could win. We were fighting a race we could not finish. But the High Command was not ready to accept defeat. They planned one more massive offensive, one final push to break human resistance. They gathered the largest fleet in coalition history. 300 warships, every available resource, every spare soldier, everything we had. And I was assigned to the forward base where that fleet would stage, a base called Theta 9, hidden in an asteroid field, protected by the best shields and weapons we had. Absolutely secure. Vexilor's expression darkened, or so we thought. Talmira sensed what was coming. What happened to Theta 9? Humans happened. And they taught me that the most dangerous weapon in war is not technology. It is patience. It is planning. It is the willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. The commander's voice was barely a whisper now. Let me tell you about Operation Silent Thunder. Night had fully fallen outside the interview facility. Vexilor asked for a short break and Talmira paused the recording. When they resumed, the old commander looked even more tired. Some memories took more energy to share than others. 2 years into the war, the Coalition High Command decided to end it. One massive strike against human shipyards. Destroy their ability to build new ships and the war would be over. They chose New Sol orbital facilities as the target. The largest human construction complex in known space. Destroy it and humans could not replace their losses. Forward base. Theta 9 was selected as the staging ground. It was perfect for the mission. Hidden deep in an asteroid field. Natural defenses. Heavy shields. Garrison of 50,000 troops. Stockpiles of weapons and fuel. Command centers with advanced communication systems. 300 warships would gather there, prepare for 6 weeks, then launch the attack. Vexilor pulled up another holographic display. It showed the base layout in detail. I was assigned a security commander. My job was to ensure nothing went wrong before the offensive launched. I had 1,500 security personnel. We screened every soldier who arrived. We scanned every supply shipment. We ran constant patrols through every section of the base. The fleet began arriving 3 months before the planned attack date. Every day, more ships, more soldiers, more supplies. The base was running perfectly. No incidents, no problems. I should have known something was wrong. Perfection is always suspicious. The commander's fingers traced paths through the holographic base. 2 weeks before launch, I felt uneasy. Nothing specific, just instinct. Something was wrong, but I could not identify what. I increased patrols. I ran additional security checks. I found nothing. 3 days before launch, the main fusion reactors went critical. All 6 of them, at the same time. The engineers said it was impossible. Multiple redundant safety systems, automated shutdowns, manual overrides. Everything failed simultaneously. Within minutes, we knew the base was lost. 50,000 personnel, 300 warships, all in danger. I ordered immediate evacuation. The ships could escape, they had their own power. But the base personnel? We had maybe 2 hours before the reactors exploded, maybe less. Vexilor closed the holographic display. Chaos, pure chaos. Soldiers running for escape pods. Ships trying to undock while still loading personnel. Alarms screaming throughout every corridor, and me trying to understand how this happened. It was not an accident. It could not be an accident. This was sabotage, but how? We had screened everyone. We had scanned everything. We had monitored every system constantly. There was no way enemy agents could have infiltrated the base. No way they could have accessed the reactor control systems. No way they could have bypassed all the security measures. The commander's voice was bitter. I was wrong about all of it. During the evacuation, one of my security teams reported something strange. 2 maintenance workers running toward the hangar bay instead of the nearest escape pods. Wrong direction for evacuation. I went to investigate personally. Time was running out, but I needed to know. I found them in Hangar Bay 7. They were stealing a transport ship. Not just any transport, one of our fastest diplomatic vessels. When I entered the hangar with my security team, they stopped and turned to face us. That is when I saw their faces clearly for the first time. The woman was named Hanul. The man was Youngsik. I knew them. Hanul worked in intelligence archives. I had seen her many times in the command center. Youngsik was part of the reactor maintenance crew. He had been on the base for 6 months. I had personally approved both their security clearances. Vexler stood and began pacing again. They were not running. They were not panicking like everyone else. They were calm. Completely calm. Young Sik was carrying a data storage device. Hanul had a weapon, but she did not point it at us. She just watched me with these cold, calculating eyes. I ordered them to surrender. Young Sik smiled. Actually smiled. He said, "Commander Vexler, we do not have much time. The reactors will explode in 40 minutes. You should evacuate with your troops." I asked who they were, how they got on the base, what they did to the reactors. Hanul answered. She said, "We have been here for 6 months. We ate your food. We learned your language better. We worked alongside your soldiers. We became you. And now we have removed the knife from your hand." The commander stopped pacing. That is when I understood. They were human. They had been human the entire time. But they had changed themselves. Surgery, genetic modification, artificial skin. They looked like us. They moved like us. They passed every security scan because on the surface they were us. I asked what was on the data device Young Sik carried. He held it up. Everything. Every military protocol. Every encryption code. Every tactical plan. Every ship movement schedule. 6 months of intelligence gathering. Our command already has most of it. This is just the backup. I raised my weapon. So did my security team. We had them surrounded. 10 armed guards against 2 saboteurs. Easy capture, except Hanul pressed something on her wrist and smoke filled the hangar. Thick black smoke that our sensors could not penetrate. When it cleared, they were in the ship and the hangar doors were opening. We fired at the ship, but it was already moving. Fast. Too fast for us to stop. Hanul's voice came over the hangar communication system. "The base will explode in 37 minutes. Save your soldiers, Commander. This war does not have to kill everyone." Vexler returned to his seat, moving slowly like his body hurt. We evacuated. 47,000 personnel made it off the base. 3,000 died when the reactors exploded. All 6 reactors went critical within seconds of each other. The blast destroyed everything. The base, the supply stockpiles, the command centers. 300 warships escaped, but without supplies or support they could not launch the offensive. The mission was canceled. 2 years of planning gone. Thousands of tons of resources destroyed. The largest coalition fleet ever assembled, scattered across multiple systems with no target and no purpose. But the worst part? The intelligence Young Sik stole. Within a week, humans were predicting our movements perfectly. They ambushed our patrols. They hit our supply convoys. They knew where we would be before we got there. Every encrypted communication we sent, they read. Every tactical plan we made, they countered. The High Command ordered complete communications blackout, new encryption protocols, manual message delivery only. We had to rebuild our entire military coordination system from the ground up. It took months, and during those months humans pressed their advantage. Talmira looked shocked. 2 people? 2 infiltrators did all that? Yes. 2 humans willing to spend 6 months pretending to be coalition citizens, living among us, eating food that probably made them sick, breathing air that was not quite right for their biology, following our customs, speaking our languages, all while knowing that one mistake would mean death. Vexler leaned back in his chair. That was my breaking point. I realized we were not fighting normal soldiers. We were fighting people who could give up their identity for months, people who could endure psychological torture for a mission, people who saw themselves as tools, weapons to be used and discarded if necessary. I sent a report to High Command. I said the war was lost, not because we lacked ships or soldiers, but because we did not understand our enemy. We thought they were like us. We thought they valued individual survival. We thought they would fight like rational beings. We were wrong about everything. Humans did not fight for rational reasons. They fought because losing meant extinction, and when a species believes extinction is the alternative, they will do anything. Anything. Change their bodies. Change their faces. Sacrifice their sanity. Give up everything that makes them individuals. All to protect the collective survival of humanity. The commander looked at his hands. Young Sik and Hanul probably had families. Probably had friends who wondered where they were. Probably had lives they wanted to return to. But they gave up 6 months of their existence to live as the enemy. That level of dedication, that level of sacrifice, we had nothing that could match it. After Theta 9 coalition morale collapsed, soldiers did not want to fight anymore. Every base suspected infiltrators. Every supply shipment could be sabotage. Every new assignment might be a trap. Fear spread through our military like disease. Not fear of battle. Fear of the enemy hidden among us. I was reassigned to intelligence analysis. My new job was to study humans, understand their psychology, find a weakness we could exploit. I spent months reviewing captured data, human history files, cultural archives, personal messages, everything we had collected during the war. Talmira sensed the story reaching a turning point. What did you discover? Vexler met her eyes. I discovered that we had already lost. We just did not know it yet. Because humans were not fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting for something we did not understand, something that made them unstoppable. Tell me, the historian said softly. The commander took a deep breath. They were fighting because they had no choice. Because their entire history taught them that surrender means extinction. Because they had nearly destroyed themselves a dozen times and learned that the only way to survive is to never, ever give up. The interview room had grown quiet. Outside, the city slept under distant stars. Vexler looked older now, his crystalline skin dull in the low light. Talmira waited patiently. This was the end of the story, and she knew it needed time. The final year of the war was different from the others, Vexler began. The coalition was still fighting, but no one believed we could win anymore. We were just trying not to lose too badly, trying to hold enough territory that peace negotiations would not be complete surrender. High Command ordered me to lead an intelligence analysis team. 50 researchers. Our mission was simple. Find a weakness in human psychology. Find something we could use against them. Some way to break their will to fight. The commander pulled up files on his personal display. We studied everything. Human history going back thousands of years. Wars they fought among themselves. Conflicts that killed millions of their own people. Genocides, nuclear weapons, biological warfare. Planetary destruction. They had done terrible things to each other. But that was not the interesting part. The interesting part was how they recovered. How they rebuilt after every catastrophe. How they chose cooperation over extinction. They had come so close to destroying themselves so many times. And every time, at the last moment, they pulled back. They chose survival. Vexler's voice grew softer. I read their stories. Not military reports, stories, fiction they created. Movies, books, games. Do you know what I found? Nearly all of them were about survival, about humans facing extinction and fighting back. They told these stories to their children. They celebrated their own resilience. They made heroes out of people who refused to surrender. That is when I understood. This war was not about territory. It was never about territory. The coalition tried to stop human expansion because we feared them. We saw a species that spread too fast, grew too strong, adapted too quickly. We wanted to contain them before they became a threat. But humans saw something different. They saw another species trying to limit their survival, trying to put them in a cage. And their entire history taught them what happens to species in cages. They die, so they fought, not because they wanted war, because they had no other choice. Talmira set down her data pad. When did the peace negotiations begin? 3 years into the war. Coalition losses were unsustainable. We had lost a third of our fleet. Human territory had doubled. Every prediction model showed complete defeat within 5 more years. The High Command finally requested ceasefire negotiations. Vexler stood and walked to the window one last time. I was selected for the delegation that traveled to Earth. 20 coalition officials, military and diplomatic. We expected to arrive at a fortress world. Military installations everywhere. Soldiers in the streets. A civilization built for war. We found the opposite. Earth was beautiful. Cities full of art and music. Parks where children played. Museums and libraries and theaters. Yes, they had military facilities. Yes, they had weapons. But that was not who they were. That was just what they could become when threatened. The negotiations were held in a building humans called the Peace Palace. Old structure, hundreds of years old. Built after one of their own devastating wars. They brought us there deliberately, showing us their history, showing us they understood the cost of war. The human delegation was led by 2 people, a diplomat named Boram and a military advisor named Kaite. Boram was young, maybe 30 human years. Kaite was older, scarred from combat. They were very different, but they worked together perfectly. The commander smiled slightly. The first real smile since the interview began. Boram showed us recordings from human history. Wars that killed millions, diseases that nearly wiped out entire populations, environmental disasters that made planets nearly uninhabitable. She showed us humans at their worst. Then she showed us how they recovered, how they rebuilt, how they chose peace after learning the cost of war. She said something I will never forget. We fight so desperately because we know what it means to lose. We have lost before. We have nearly gone extinct before. Every time we survived by refusing to give up. But we do not want to be warriors. We want to be explorers, artists, scientists, families. We want to live. But we will be the best warriors in the galaxy if that is what survival demands. Vexlor turned from the window. Kite added the military perspective. He said, "We did not want this war. We did not start this war. We just refuse to let you end us. If you try again, we will fight again. But if you choose peace, we will be the best neighbors you ever had." The negotiations lasted 6 weeks. The treaty terms were simple. Coalition recognizes human territory. Humans stop expansion for 20 years. Joint technology sharing programs. Cultural exchange initiatives. Trade agreements. And most importantly, mutual defense pact. If either side is attacked by external forces, the other will help. Talmira looked surprised. Mutual defense? After 5 years of war? Yes, that was human suggestion. Boram said, "We fought because we had to. Now let us prove we can be better than our worst moments." The coalition agreed. We needed allies. The war had weakened us. And humans had proven they could be valuable friends or terrible enemies. I volunteered to stay on Earth as coalition liaison. High Command agreed. They wanted someone who understood humans, someone who had fought them and survived. So I stayed. The commander's expression softened. That was 30 years ago. I have lived on Earth since then. I learned human languages. I studied their cultures. I made friends. Real friends, not just diplomatic contacts. 5 years after the treaty, I met a human woman named Sun Young. She worked as a teacher, educating human children about other species, about coalition culture, about the importance of understanding instead of fearing. We talked, we became close. Eventually, we chose to become life partners. Vexlor showed Talmira a small image on his display. A human woman with gray hair smiling. 2 children, hybrid genetics clear in their features. We have 2 children, partly human, partly Thalan. They represent something impossible before the war. 2 species that tried to destroy each other, creating life together. My children ask me sometimes why I fought their mother's people. I tell them the truth. Because I was afraid. Because I did not understand. Because I followed orders without thinking about what those orders meant. They ask if I regret it. The commander's voice broke slightly. Every single day. I regret every battle. Every soldier I commanded. Every human who died because I did not have the wisdom to see another way. But I am grateful I survived long enough to understand them, to learn from them, to become part of their world. Talmira leaned forward. Why did you want this interview recorded? Why now? Because people are forgetting. Young coalition citizens who were born after the war. They hear stories about human aggression. They hear complaints about human expansion. They do not remember what happened when we tried to stop them. They do not remember the cost. Vexler's voice grew stronger. There are voices in coalition government calling for new restrictions on humanity. New limits on their territory. New controls on their technology. They say humans are too dangerous, too unpredictable, too willing to change themselves in their society. They are right about all those things. Humans are dangerous. They are unpredictable. They will modify themselves in ways we find disturbing. But that is exactly why we must never fight them again. Because they will always adapt faster than we can respond. They will always find ways to survive that we cannot imagine. They will always be willing to sacrifice more than we can. The commander looked directly at the recording device. I need the next generation to understand something fundamental about humanity. You do not fight them. You cannot fight them and win. You can only choose to coexist peacefully or die trying to contain them. There is no middle ground. There is no compromise. Either we accept them as equals and partners or we face extinction at their hands. Not because they want to destroy us, but because they will do whatever it takes to survive. And they are very, very good at surviving. Talmira asked one final question. What would you say to someone who still fears humanity? Vexler thought for a long moment. I would say fear is natural. Humans are different from us. They think differently. They act differently. Their capacity for violence is terrifying, but their capacity for cooperation is equally powerful. They can be your worst enemy or your best friend. The choice is ours, not theirs. I would tell them to visit Earth, meet humans, learn their stories, understand that every species has darkness in its past. Every species has done terrible things. The question is not what they were. The question is what they choose to become. Humans chose peace. They chose cooperation. They chose to build something better than endless war. We should honor that choice by doing the same. The commander stood, signaling the interview was complete. I have one request for this recording. When it is archived, include a warning label. Make sure everyone who watches it understands the message. What message? Talmira asked. Never underestimate humanity. Never threaten their survival. Never force them to choose between surrender and extinction, because they will always choose to fight, and they will always find a way to win. Vexler walked to the door, then paused. I am going home now. My wife is making dinner. My children want help with their homework.